I'm so glad to welcome you to the Neponset River Reservation. I hope you have already started enjoying this beautiful park on the banks of the Neponset. My name is Leo Roy. I'm your Commissioner of the Department of Conservation and Recreation, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here with you. Isn't it wonderful that the rain stopped and is going to stay stopped during our program this afternoon? But we need that rain to help water these beautiful lawns and the flowers and the wildflower garden that's going to be here. The Department of Conservation and Recreation manages nearly 500,000 acres of protected open space on your behalf, the people of Massachusetts. And we're so proud and honored to recognize this facility today in honor of State Senator Joseph Finnegan. Before we get started, I'd like to invite Laura Finnegan Pratt, Senator Finnegan's granddaughter, to come forward and join us in the singing of our national anthem. And coming up with her is cousin? Catherine Finnegan. And if you'll all just turn to the flag behind us.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Lauren. That was fabulous. This park represents a commitment on behalf of the Baker-Polito administration to something that's very important to all of you, and that's connectivity. This multi-use trail along which the park is located, the Neponset River Greenway, connects, when the last pieces are finally put together, you'll be able to travel from Castle Island all the way to the Blue Hills. And what we're doing with these multi-use trails is connecting communities, a very important goal. Today we're really celebrating on behalf of State Senator Joseph Finnegan, really a legacy of public service that you'll hear about from other speakers who really brought us to this place. And I think that that legacy of public service is certainly represented by Governor Baker, by Mayor Marty Walsh, who, as you know, worked on this project as a state rep, and many others worked very hard to bring us to this day. With that, I'd like to introduce my boss and my friend, Matthew Beaton, your Secretary of the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, and thank you all very much for being here and taking time out of your Saturday to be here with us to celebrate something that I know, talking to a lot of the folks a little bit ago, John and some others, a very, very long time coming. This is a truly exciting time for us to be here to celebrate the opening of this park, not only for the Finnegan family, but for everyone in the Commonwealth, for everyone in the neighborhood, for everybody in Boston. This is truly exciting because what it is another step along the way. So many folks have worked so hard to clean up this beautiful resource behind us, the beautiful resource that we're standing here, and now to have this beautiful open space for everybody in the neighborhood and everybody in the region to enjoy is truly exciting. And that is really core to the mission of us at EEA. Not only to provide the conservation and recreational opportunities under the Department of Conservation and Recreation, under the Commissioner's leadership, but at the Department of Environmental Protection, to clean up these, to see these abandoned sites cleaned up and be put to better use. And what better use than to have this open space here for all to enjoy, to provide that critical link, adjacency to Pope John Paul Park, and in the bike path, and just another step along the way, both in the cleanup and creating that connectivity that the commissioner referenced. It is really, really exciting, and it is a centerpiece of Governor Baker's commitment. Because when we came into office and we talked about different opportunities and different programs, this was one at the top of the list that is really, truly reflective of Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito's commitment to our urban parks and our opportunities, no matter the zip code, to have beautiful spaces to get outside, get away, turn that TV off, and really just enjoy our beautiful resources here in the Commonwealth. So I am truly honored to be here on behalf of DCR and all the EEA agencies that worked so closely with so many to make this day possible. I want to tip my hat and just say a very big, sincere thank you to everyone who worked so hard over the years. Your persistence, the great leadership that we have in the city of Boston with my former colleagues and friends in the legislature. You have some a history of phenomenal representation, and certainly my good friend, the mayor, who is always a pleasure to work with in his agencies and my counterparts that serve for him. So on behalf of everyone at EEA, thank you. And now it is truly a great honor and a pleasure to introduce to you my boss, the Governor of the Commonwealth, Charlie Baker.
Well, thank you very much, Secretary Beaton, and kudos to Commissioner Roy and the rest of the team at Environmental Affairs and the Department of Conservation and Recreation, which I spell F-U-N, as in fun, for all that they've done, not just here, but across the park system here in the Commonwealth. This one in particular, for me anyway, was important that I be here today, certainly for the reasons that were outlined by the Secretary and Commissioner, but also because this is the Joseph Finnegan Park. Joe Finnegan came here from County Mayo. He was one of 10 kids. It's a wonderful immigrant story. He came here and he went from hauling coal to becoming a state representative and becoming a state senator during the Depression. He had 9 kids, including among them John Finnegan, who grew up to be the Auditor of the Commonwealth, Patricia Cannon, Collins, whose husband Michael was an astronaut, and she wrote poignantly and beautifully about that. But one of the other kids was Joe Finnegan, and Joe Finnegan served the Commonwealth of Mass through the Department of Mental Health for many years. And when I was a young whippersnapper at the age of about 32, joining the Weldon Cellucci administration as Undersecretary at Health and Human Services, Joe Finnegan, who I just talked to literally as I was walking up the path here, he's in Florida, and sends his best to everybody, was incredibly helpful to me in making sure that I didn't do all the stupid things that new people do. When I still probably do plenty of stupid things, but Joe was just an incredible mentor, guidance counselor, and advisor to me as I joined state government, learned the ropes, and tried to do the best I could to serve the people of the Department of Mental Health and the Department of Health and Human Services. And the story of the Finnegan family is truly a great story of finding your way here in the Commonwealth of Mass in the city of Boston, public service, and great things. And it's really a tribute to the Finnegan family, but especially to Joe and to all the Finnegans who are here today. And my God, there are millions of them. Good for you to be able to say to all of you how much we appreciate the work the Finnegan family has done for so many people in the city of Boston and the Commonwealth of Mass over so many generations, and how honored and thrilled we are to be able to call this the Joseph Finnegan Park as part of this big necklace here along the Neponset River. Thank you very much.
Let me introduce the mayor of your great city, Mayor Marty Walsh.
Thanks, Commissioner. The governor screwed up. He's supposed to introduce me, so thank you, God, for that great introduction. I truly appreciate it.
This is not only the mayor of the great city of Boston, but one of the guys who did a fabulous job working on Beacon Hill as a member of the state legislature, and is also
keep going.
and is also the guy who has continued to deliver for the people of the city of Boston time and time again and over again in his role as mayor. How's that?
Thanks, Gov. Thank you very much, Gov. Appreciate it. I want to thank the governor and his administration, and certainly Matt Beaton and Commissioner Roy, who do an incredible job. I served with Matt in the House of Representatives. He was a great state representative, and I was excited when Governor Baker appointed him as a secretary, because I knew that we'd have somebody in that office that truly cared about our open spaces here in Dorchester and in Boston, so thank you for that. I want to congratulate John Lyons and the Port Norfolk Civic Association. I'm going to talk more about Port Norfolk in a second, but I want to thank also the Ponce Greenway Council, the Dorchester Historical Society, and members of the Finnegan family. It's great to see Tom here today, too. So it's great to see everyone here and the other family members. 20 years ago, last month, I got sworn in as state representative. I followed Jim Brett in the legislature, and I came down to my first Port Norfolk meeting down at the Yacht Club. And John Kroll was the president at the time. And I remember talking about getting money for this park. And Jim Brett had previously got money in a bond bill before that for this park. And I remember having a conversation saying, well, we're going to design the park. And I made the big mistake of trying to tell the neighborhood that we should open it up for other things. And I got yelled at and told to be quiet and go just get money from us at the State House. And it truly, those of you, everyone here knows this, but those of you that might not know, this was basically DCR, MDC used it for storage, but it was a dumping ground. People would break through the fence and dump stuff in here all the time. They'd light things on fire. We'd get calls, whether it was John Kroll or Mary McCarthy or John Lyons or different civic association people here. There was always a problem here. We're worried about hazardous waste. And the people, the governor gets credit, Matt Beaton gets credit, Leo Roy gets credit, I get credit, Jim Brett, Paul White, and all the elected officials get credit. It's really the community. You were the ones who were so tenacious on this. This started under, I think, Jim Brett trying to get money for this park. He couldn't do it. Then it came to me, and I couldn't do it. So Danny Hunt had to get it done. It took Danny Hunt and Frank Baker and that crew to get it done. But over the years, and I don't mean to, if I leave anyone out, I apologize. I don't mean to. Barbara and Ben Tankle. Barbara's looking down at us today, and she's smiling, and she's probably yelling at me saying, "Took you long enough, Walsh." Jim and Mary Maloney. They were the first two people I met when I started knocking doors down the port. John Kroll, I don't know if John's here today, but thank you, John Kroll, for all those years of leadership in the Civic Association. Mary McCarthy, as well, who led the Civic Association. Joanne Utz. Joanne, thank you so much for your advocacy, too, putting pressure on us. Eddie Roach, Maria Lyons, and I could go on and on and on of all the great people. I want to thank you. Nancy Cummings. Thank you, Nancy. This is $4.25 million is greatly appreciated. Somebody mentioned, I think Matt Beaton mentioned, I'm going to stop talking here because I get to introduce the person who really should be up here because, honest to God, I jokingly said it, but he is a main reason why this happened today. But we've been blessed in Dorchester. When you think of the Finnegan family, you think of Paul White, was our state senator here when I first got elected. And then after Paul, it was Stevie Lynch. And then after Stevie, it was Jackie Hart. And then after Jackie, it was Linda Docina-Fori. We had Senator White before that, and Bill Bulger on the other side in the Savin Hill area. Our state representatives in this area. A guy who deserves a lot of praise for this park is Tommy Finneran. If it weren't for Tommy Finneran, we wouldn't have had Pope John Paul Park over here. We wouldn't have had the extension. This is really what Tommy Finneran started in a lot of ways as Ways and Means Chair, and then as a Speaker of the House of Representatives. Jim Brett, we joke with Jim Brett all the time, but Jim did so many other things in his own right as a state representative. We've been blessed. We've had great city council leadership as well. And I know that City Councilor Frank Baker's with us today. City Councilor Nisha Sabi George is with us today. City Councilor Ayanna Presley's with us today. All Dorchester, by the way, all three of them. So I want to welcome them. But I say this often. One of the best job I've ever had was being the representative from Dorchester, the 13th Suffolk District. I loved that job. I love the people I represented. I love the neighborhoods I represented, including the port here. And when I decided to run for mayor of the city of Boston, and I was fortunate enough to win, we had a great person who came into the House of Representatives. And somebody said right after, oh, you have big shoes to fill. And I heard that same thing when I followed Jim Brett. There's no big shoes to fill. When you take these jobs, you make your own ways. You fill your own shoes and you blaze your own path. And Danny Hunt has done an incredible job, not only just continuing to fight to make sure this money's here for this park in Dorchester, but he's done an incredible job representing all of us in the city of Boston and in Dorchester and one precinct in Quincy. And I'd like to turn over to you, your state representative, Danny Hunt.
Just like I wrote it. I stole that line from Jim Brett. Jim says that this seat and Dorchester in general has a great tradition of our elected leaders, and he tells me that one day I'll get there. Obviously, want to thank the governor for really making this happen. You know, we work on a bond bill, but it's up to him and the secretary and the commissioner to get it done. I remember when I worked at DCR, long conversations with people in the neighborhood, then President Mary McCarthy, and it was your patience and your dedication that got this done. We're all standing here behind a ribbon, but it really should be all of you, as the mayor said. Senator Forey's not here, but this is part of her vision, along with the Neponset Greenway Council. She's been a staunch supporter of the Greenway. Thank you, Governor, for spending $22 million on the Neponset Greenway over at Mattapan. I see Rob Lowell. Rob Lowell spent a lot of time in this neighborhood as our engineer on the project. Yeah. To think that this was not available to the general public, this area, for so long, it's truly a beautiful piece of property at the mouth of the Neponset, the scenic Neponset River. This is another step in the pocket parks that are going to connect the rest of the river, and I know that the commissioner and the secretary and the governor are working hard on the remainder of the Greenway, but we want to say thank you to them. Thank you to all of you. Thank you to people like Jim Brett, Paul White, Tom Finneran, who passed the only capital supplemental budget that I ever heard of for St. Pope John Paul Park. So he definitely did a lot of work on that. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for God for providing us with a little son. And I'm here to introduce my good friend, the dean of the Dorchester delegation, my good friend, small in stature, big in heart. He lives in Savin Hill, but he loves us just the same. My friend Frank Baker.
I don't know why he calls me the dean, but whatever, I guess so. The mayor had spoke about it already. It's the people on this side of the microphone, the generations that worked on this for at least a generation or more, that now, because of the work that happened on this side over here, we'll be able to give this to our children for the generations to come. So what a great thing that is. Everybody, for me, I'm a city official, so this is more just a victory lap for me. This is all state, and it goes back to Paul White and Jim Brett and Marty. What great representation we've had over these past years. We're fortunate where we live, and this park is maybe somewhat of a symbol of what's going on in Dorchester. They were dumping on us for years. We've been the dumping zone for the city for years, and now we're getting new things. We're getting a whole new, fresh outlook on life. So I'm thrilled to be the representative down here. What a great honor it is to have people like the people in the port that know how to fight, know what they want in their neighborhoods, and because you guys know what you want in your neighborhood, this is why we ended up with this. So thank you, and thank you, of course, to the governor for coming here and making this happen for us. Thank you. Anybody else? Am I introducing anybody else? Oh, John Lyons. Thank you, John.
Good afternoon, and thank you. Don't be concerned because I've got a piece of paper to read from. I just want to make sure I don't forget. And most of what I was going to say has already been said. When I was a kid growing up in Neponset, the names Finnegan, White, and Hunt were names that were well respected. They were people who were active in the community and active in the parish and ultimately active in government. And they set very high standards. And it was back in that day that this park was first conceived, I remember as a kid, and some of you who were around in those days remember, one of the things that we would do for entertainment when we didn't have much dough, as no one did in those days, was get on the T and ride around, see where it would take you. And one of the places we often found ourselves was on the Charles River Esplanade. And we always thought we would never see anything that nice in Dorchester. And now here we are today. It's actually happened. But it all started back in the day when John Finnegan proposed this park. And he proposed the name of the park in honor of his father, who I'm sure had set the tone of service for his own life. And I'm proud to be standing here today dedicating this park in that name, in memory of those people who started it all. There are two things I take out of this. The first is that we never thought we would see anything this nice. And it doesn't just belong to Port Norfolk or to Neponset. It's part of that system that runs ultimately all the way from Castle Island to the Blue Hills. It's nearly complete now all the way to Mattapan Square. And it never would have been accomplished without a number of people working together. First of all, the citizens of Port Norfolk, the residents who stuck together all these years. I'm honored to be a resident of this neighborhood. I congratulate you. And I hope the other people here will acknowledge that this was largely the effort of those people from Port Norfolk. But there were so many other people involved, we never would have done it alone. And that's the important thing that I take from it. If you don't organize, if you don't reach out to other communities and get to meet other people to support your vision, the odds of it happening are not that great. The Commonwealth is a big place, as we all know. It's a small state, but still a big place. It stretches all the way from Provincetown to the Berkshires, from Salisbury Beach to New Bedford and Fall River. There are a lot of very worthy projects being proposed, a lot of communities that all want government spending. So it's a great privilege that we all have that money was allocated here. My argument is that just as I saw the Charles River Reservation as such a great place, and we all know about the Blue Hills Reservation as one of the greatest public facilities in the country, now the Neponset River is becoming that. And it's going to benefit everyone in the region, and anyone in the state can come here and enjoy this river in its natural state. And this particular piece of land that you're standing on is the only place on Boston Harbor that is going to be more like one of the harbor islands than anything else on the mainland. It's being preserved as a natural place. The other side of this fence, we have restored marshland. Now kids from around here are going to be able to come down and see these things. And that is important. It's important for people to get out and enjoy the outdoors and appreciate the natural environment. At the risk of missing people and offending people, I'd like to recognize a few people, starting with the Neponset Greenway Council, which was at one point headed by Valerie Burns and her great assistant Candace Cook, who I know is here today. City Councilor Maureen Feeney, who is now the city clerk in the city of Boston. She always stood with Port Norfolk. Jack Harder was our state senator. Although he's from Southie, he married a girl from Neponset, and Jack was helpful, and we always remember that. Senator Linda Forey took up the cause as soon as she was elected, and that's when the thing really got traction and began to happen. Representative Walsh, Representative Dan Hunt, Jack Murray, the former commissioner, Ian Cook, Kathy Garnett from MDC, DCR, Mike Mislin, Rob Lowell, let me pause while the train passes. And Ruth Hatfield, who was one of the planners, who listened to us as Mayor Walsh had to listen to the people of Port Norfolk. So did Ruth and all the people from DCR. And if we ever seemed impatient to you and offended you, we apologize, and we thank you all for all of your help. I'm getting close to the conclusion. Before the legislation, though, The reason this land was available in the first place was many years ago, more than 30 years ago, Port Norfolk had its own version of the Pink Hat March. The women of Port Norfolk, led by Barbara Tankle, marched down these streets to this gate right over here. They linked arms and they prevented trucks that were coming in here dumping hazardous waste. It was going to be processed and then transported. And they held out, and then Mayor Ray Flynn backed us up through ISD activity. They evicted the company that was operating the illegal transfer operation, and the land was then vacant. And it was Representative Finnegan who authorized the legislation to take this land. So the land was then secured, but without the start that was engaged in by, again, the women of this neighborhood, it never would have happened. And in the intervening years, at the risk of sounding like I'm engaging in favoritism, which I'm willing to do, my wife, Maria Glavel Lyons, who is a biologist, teacher, mother, the person with the actual technical knowledge to make the arguments, and with the history of political engagement of her own parents, the Glavins from Meeting House Hill, she was willing to fight the fight. And like a good Dorchester woman, she did never back down. So congratulations, Maria. And again, I'd like to thank all of our friends at the Neponset Greenway Council, because without your help, without help of people literally from Mattapan, Milton, Lower Mills, Cedar Grove, Savin Hill, and other parts of Dorchester, this never would have happened, which says to me the most important message here is you may not always get what you want, especially when you're allocating resources which may be scarce. But if you get involved with other people, if you reach out, not only do you get to meet those people and work with them, you can all accomplish things by working for each other's goals when you understand them. That is why it's the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We work together. So again, congratulations to the Port. Thank you for everyone who helped us. And to the Finnegans, welcome home to Neponset. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I'd like to point out that the sun came out for your state senator, Linda DeCino-Fore.
Wow, mighty large. Okay, let me bring it. The sun came out for all of us today. Good afternoon, everyone. It is so great to be here with all of you, and thank you, John. Thank you for your leadership and the incredible Port Norfolk community right here for making this amazing day happen. Would not happen if it wasn't for you working hard and holding us accountable to say we need to get this cleaned up. I want to thank our governor, Governor Baker, for being here and for your support. Mayor Walsh, I know Mayor Marty Walsh spoke already, but you know he was the state rep, right, for here when this was all taking place, so we want to thank you. So many people to thank. I know they've been recognized. So I came here running, driving, was safe. Followed the rules of the road, I'm just letting you know, but had to take my daughters and move them through events. But I also want to recognize Senator John Finnegan and the Finnegan family who has joined us on this special day. You know, Senator Finnegan represented Dorchester during the Great Depression and embodied the Dorchester tradition of public service. It's Senator Finnegan's legacy of service passed on to his children, particularly David and John, who both served this city and Commonwealth with pride and distinction. In fact, it was his son, John, who played a critical role in securing this very land and others in Dorchester for future public use. The vision, right, the leadership and the vision, and how do we keep space open for our families that are coming up after us. It is extremely fitting that this park will forever bear his name. So I want to thank the Finnegan family for your amazing record of public service to our community. So thank you. To the Port Norfolk Association, the Neighborhood Association, and residents of the area played a crucial role, as you've heard, right? Yes, let's give a clap. Come on. Maria, all right, played a crucial role in the development of this park, of course. And Mayor, of course. But as many of you know too well, the Schaefer Paper Company called this land home for many years. This site was once a toxic wasteland that was a pox on the community. Longtime neighborhood stewards such as Ben and Barbara Tankel, Mary McCarthy, and John and Maria Lyons were constant champions of this park. Without their determination and passion, we may well not be here today to do this groundbreaking. And it's the collective passion and love for the neighborhood is why we're standing here today. And I can tell you that when I ran for state senate and I was knocking on doors, and I came to Port Norfolk, and I knocked on Maria and John's doors and everyone's door, and they said, you know what, we have the Schaefer Paper site. It's a toxic, contaminated site. We need a park. It needs to be connected to the Neponset Trail. And so we worked hard as a delegation, incredible delegation, now with our mayor but state rep, when he was a state rep. And we worked hard with our now state rep, Dan Hunt, who was at DCR, to say we need to get this done, right? And so we worked hard. And this project started under the administration, I cannot forget but saying this, under the administration of former Governor Deval Patrick, and is now seeing the finish line under the leadership of our current governor, Charlie Baker, and his incredible administration that believes in open space. Secretary Beaton's here, Commissioner Roy, that believes in open space, that believes in cleanup, that believes in giving quality opportunities and play spaces for our community. So I want to thank the governor and his team, Secretary Beaton, DCR Commissioner Leo Roy, for seeing this project through fruition. And our mayor, as a state rep, when this project first started, when we first got the funding and said this is going to get done. Thank you, Mayor, for your hard work and for working along our incredible counselor, Frank Baker, for making this a reality. But all our city councilors who are here today, and I know they were recognized. So I will stop and now bring up someone whose family bears the name of this park, right, to represent the Finnegan family for their commitment of decades past, right, before I was, I'm not going to say before I was born, but right, before I was here and standing here before you as a state senator. And we have incredible elected officials that came before us, and we want to recognize them. I know Senator Paul White is here. Thank you for your leadership in working hard on this when it came to your plate. Senator Jack Hart, I believe, was here as well. So many folks who laid the groundwork for us to get here today. But I want to thank the Finnegan family again for the commitment and the love of coming from this great community we call Dorchester. And so I'm going to bring up someone who's going to speak on behalf of the Finnegan family, and that's Steve Finnegan. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Before I start, I'd like to recognize my brother, who many of you know quite well. And he's the only other sibling who was able to join me here today, my brother Tom Finnegan, the mayor of Neponset. I want to echo what others have said about the support from the community for this project, the support from the people standing behind me here. I'm going to start with Governor Baker for just a moment. We very much appreciate all of the work that he has done for this creation of this park at this point in time. I would just say this about Governor Baker. My brother Joe, who is not well, was, and Governor Baker was aware of this some 5 or 6 months ago. And I called Joe one afternoon and I said, "How are you doing, Joe?" And he said, "Well, all right." He says, "Guess who I heard from today?" And I said, "John Farrell, they need a relief pitcher for the Sox or something?" And he said, "No." He indicated, after a few other futile guesses on my part, that it was Charlie Baker. Now, Charlie has indicated how he knew Joe and how grateful he was for some of that guidance some years ago. I just want to let you know, Governor, that I could tell from listening to my brother's voice at a time when he needed to be cheered up, and the governor knew that, that your call to him meant a tremendous amount, and we appreciate that very much. Furthermore, I think it says a lot about the governor in that he has the compassion to do something like that and never looking for any credit as a result of it. We're very pleased about that. Mayor Walsh, who continues the tradition. I'm gonna go to the Dorchester delegation. It used to be called the Powerful Dorchester Delegation, and correctly so, because it is today a powerful entity. And we're very happy that to have been part of that as a family with my father and my brother, and also for Representative Walsh and Jim Brett and the senator, etc. And of course Dan Hunt for all his good work here in terms of putting some of this together. The delegation is still a very powerful delegation. Senator Dosina Forey was recently appointed as the Assistant Majority Whip in the State Senate, a very prestigious position. And the same is true with Dan Hunt, who is serving on both the Joint Committee on Ways and Means and the House Committee on Ways and Means. Unusual appointments that early in his career. So it started at the beginning, it worked its way through, and of course with the election of the mayor, it reached its culmination and fruition, and hopefully, Mayor, that will be soon your re-election. We appreciate all of that. I'm here to do one thing or two things for the family today. And that is, first of all, to tell you a little bit about Joseph Finnegan and why this park is so appropriately named for him, I would say. And also to mention my brother John and some of his contributions to these efforts over the years. My father was born in County Mayo in 1898. He joined a large family of 9 other siblings. He arrived in America in 1916. My Aunt Helen and Uncle Pat preceded their younger brother Joe to this country, emigrating from Ireland in 1912, and were living with their father's sister in Fitchburg, Mass. Pat and Helen knew that my father was due to arrive in the country, but did not know the exact day or hour. My Uncle Pat, who many of you knew, told me several times of his first sighting of my father. It was late in the day. He was sitting on the front porch of Aunt Katie's home when he looked into the setting sun and saw someone approaching from a distance. As the figure came closer, he realized that it was his youngest brother Joe, whom he had not seen in 4 long years. Overcome with happiness, Pat leaped from the porch, rushed to embrace the brother, and many years later, Pat told me this story with tears in his eyes and said that this was the happiest day of his life. Thus began the typical story of immigrants who came to America at that time and supported one another. Joe had been an excellent student in Ireland and was sent to America during World War I. Uncle Pat and Aunt Helen, his brother and sister, who had promised her mother that she would take care of her little brother Joe, a promise I can assure you that she admirably fulfilled. They soon moved to Holyoke, where Pat got a job and was able to support his brother and sister. My father began school at Holyoke High School, where he continued his record of academic excellence by completing his studies in 2 years. His outstanding school record brought him to the attention of the Dwight family, very prominent in Holyoke. Among other things, they owned the local newspaper. The Dwights took great interest in my father, and no doubt had a hand in my father's admission to prestigious Bowdoin College, a highly unusual event for a recently arrived immigrant just 2 years off the boat. After completion of studies, he attended and graduated from Boston University Law School, where he finished number 2 in the class of 1923. despite working full-time while attending school. He continued living with my aunt and uncle, who moved to Boston from Holyoke so that my father could attend BU Law School, and they lived in Dorchester on King Street. My father subsequently opened and maintained for many years a successful Boston law practice. He was particularly sought out by other immigrants, Irish immigrants, who had come to this country. The Finnegan connection in Port Norfolk would have begun at least in 1926, when my father was first elected state representative for this district. During his successful re-election campaign, while going door to door, he met my mother, Julia Kendrigan, who lived within a stone's throw of this park at 7 Lorenzo Street. When he returned home, he told my Uncle Pat that he had met the most beautiful girl in Dorchester. In August of 1929, they were married in St. Anne's Parish Church. The marriage produced 9 children, all of whom served the community as teachers, lawyers, and public servants. My father was elected to the Senate in 1930 and again in 1932. From 1933 through 34, he was elected by his peers as Senate Minority Leader. Yes, I said Minority Leader. The Democrats did not take control of the state Senate in Massachusetts until 1960, believe it or not. The close-knit band of Senate Democrats in those days numbered just 13 out of 40 members, which represented a large number for the beleaguered Democrats in those days. During this time, my father fought the Boston Gas Company's proposal to build dozens of gas tanks in Clam Point, near where the Sister Carita decorated tank stands today. He was successful in this fight, although it cost him dearly. Some people say it cost him his re-election to the Senate in 1934. He was successful, though, and the gas company moved the tanks to Everett, where they remain to this day. If you drive over the Mystic River Bridge, look left, and if it's a good day, you'll see all those tanks where? Abutting the Mystic River and the water over in Everett. Thank God that didn't happen here. I suggest if it had, we would not be dedicating this park today. In an ironic twist, the gas company made another effort to add LNG tanks in the early 1970s to the Clam Point site. The Dorchester legislative delegation, I'll say the powerful Dorchester legislative delegation, led in those days by my brother John, state representative from 1967 to 1981, and chairman of Ways and Means from 1975 through 1981, defeated this proposal. Had the 1930s or 1970 efforts of the Boston Gas Company prevailed, there'd be no park on this site. My brother John could never understand how the government in the 1950s was allowed to take over 2/3 of Tinny Ann Beach to build the expressway, thereby decimating Tinny Ann Beach and effectively walling off people from their waterfront while offering no mitigation whatsoever. In the fall of 1966, at the old Dorchester Post, shortly after his election, my brother pledged that he would work to get himself in a position to have the Dorchester waterfront restored from Granite Avenue to Malibu Beach and by extension to Castle Island. After his appointment as chairman of Ways and Means Committee, he more than fulfilled that promise with the help of many of the people here. And today marks the completion of the final link in the restoration of the Dorchester waterfront and the restoration of Dorchester's front yard. You would think that the creation of parks would be welcomed and supported by all. Unfortunately, 50 years of delay did not happen by accident. For example, the first owner of the Boston Patriots, Billy Sullivan, wanted to build a stadium on land that now includes John Paul II Park, Granite Avenue to the old drive-in site. And this was a multi-year effort on his part. This would have had enormous negative traffic consequences and parking, and it affected the quality of life of the St. Brendan's area and the entire Dorchester community. John Finnegan and his Dorchester legislative colleagues opposed that stadium project and defeated it. Billy Sullivan, my brother told me recently, who was the head of the Boston Patriots, was so furious at John's opposition that he upbraided him at a public function and said he would change the name from the Boston Patriots to the New England Patriots. John's retort was, "That's a great trade." There were many other proposed uses of the park for commercial purposes. Ultimately, the land from Granite Avenue to Victory Road was designated as a park by legislative action that required an 80% majority vote, thereby protecting this land and access to the waterfront. And as you heard, this was followed up by Tom Finneran, by many of the people behind me, by Marty Walsh, and et cetera, in terms of what they were able to do, and the Senator Dorsina Fori, what they were able to do in the appropriation area to make this a reality. My father and mother passed away in 1960 and 62, respectively. Without question, they would be overjoyed to see people using this park, access to which was closed off to the public for decades. Also, this last link of the Dorchester waterfront and park restoration is aptly named for my father due to the circumstances of the gas tank issue, which I mentioned to you, and by extension my mother, who both had such close ties to Port Norfolk. We thank you, the people of Port Norfolk. You are the ones who dealt with most of the turmoil and difficulty and really outrageous things environmentally that happened on this property over the years. You are the ones who continued living here in the face of all of these obstacles. And it is for you today that this project is most important. Your forbearance, your patience has finally been rewarded. God bless you, and thank you very much. I'd like to introduce to you Secretary Beaton for some further remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and what a great story. It was great to hear some of the history and, you know, again, history of not only the family but the neighborhood and what brought us here today. And that is the completion of the formal speaking part of the program. Before we wrap that up and do the ribbon cutting, I would like to just point out one other group that we want to say thank you to and a congratulations to, and that is the Neponset River Watershed Association, which thank you for all of your efforts and congratulations on your 50th anniversary. And on that, now it is time for the official ribbon cutting ceremony.